Donald Green, and our special guest, Senator Mia McLeod, who will speak with us about her platform and her candidacy in the gubernatorial race that is happening in the state of South Carolina. So go ahead and share this, invite friends, let them know we're live tonight from Mountain View with a special edition and an opportunity for us to be able to share information that is important for our community. At this time, I'd like to welcome up Pastor Zachary Johnson, who will offer prayer for us as we begin.
Let us pray. Eternal God, our Father, we come to say thank you for this day. Thank you for allowing us to be able to see another day. Thank you for this glorious opportunity that we have come together, Father, to be able, Father, to share and to be able to ask questions to Senator Mia McLeod. Thank you, oh God, for her being here. Thank you for the safety that you've allowed her to be here. Thank you, Father, for allowing us to have this opportunity to be able to share with questions and even listen to her platform, because we're in a very serious times, even in the state of South Carolina, so we need good servant leadership. So we just thank you, Father, for sending her here today as she not only shares her platform with us, but that we will be able to ask her questions and clarification. So, Father, we thank you for that. Thank you so much, Father, for even giving us the opportunity to be able to come and listen in the midst of the church of servant leadership and what it means to serve not only our locale, but also serve our state and our nation. So we thank you again. We praise you for all that you're going to do. We thank you so much for our state president being here, President Green. We thank you so much for him being here as well. So, Father, bless this time. Bless all of us. In your Son, Jesus' name, we pray. Amen.
I want to say good evening to everyone, and I want to thank Pastor Mills for opening the doors to this wonderful church and the church family for participating through virtual means, and want to thank again Dr. Green for making it possible so for Senator Mia McLeod to be here, and we're very excited that you are here. Thank you for coming to be here with us today. The way we're going to flow today, we're going to just kind of learn some things and ask some questions of her, and she'll share some things with all of us. And we're opening up to the audience. If you eventually would like to ask some questions also, we encourage your participation. And we're living in very challenging times, difficult times. We've just come through a global pandemic, and we're continuing to see things happening across our nation. All of our hearts have been broken regarding what we've seen in Buffalo, New York over the weekend, and we're still trying to adjust to those realities. So we're going to just take a few moments and ask a few questions, and then allow the audience to participate as well. So once again, Senator McLeod, thank you for being here. And we would love to just hear, I'm going to ask you an easy question. Why are you running for governor of South Carolina?
That is an easy question and a very difficult question to answer. I've served in the South Carolina House for 6 years. I've served in the South Carolina Senate for 6. I'm the only candidate in this primary who has state government experience, period. But I'm running because of my sons. I have 2 young adult sons, and neither one of them wants to live in South Carolina as an adult. They don't believe that their lives matter here. They don't believe that their voices matter here, and they're right. After 2 decades of Republican, can't call them leaders, but after 2 decades of Republicans controlling the state, it's obvious to me that they are running our best and brightest away from South Carolina. And it didn't just start happening. I thought back to growing up in Bennettsville, South Carolina. I thought back to the fact that so many of my classmates left our state when I graduated high school, and they have yet to return, which means we've missed generations of leaders. We've missed their brilliance. We've missed their contributions. And so many of them are doing great things in California, in Florida, in New York. And we talk a lot about losing our teachers, and we are for good reason. We talk about losing healthcare professionals, and we are for good reason. But what we're not talking about is the fact that our young people are leaving this state in search of higher pay and equal opportunity and a better quality of life. And if we continue to lose them in record numbers like we are currently doing, we won't recognize our state in 4 more years. If we have 4 more years of Henry McMaster, we won't recognize the state. And more importantly, this state won't recognize us, right? So I'm running for selfish reasons. I want my sons to want to live here. I want our best and brightest to want to live here. I am a 7th generation South Carolinian, born and raised in Bennettsville, South Carolina. And I know all too well the hardships that rural South Carolinians face. But to think about my sons wanting to leave for the same reasons that my classmates wanted to leave and did leave, it just shows how far we haven't come. And even now, we are turning back the clock. We are regressing in ways that I never thought we would. I think about the conversations that I had with my parents about my future, and they are both now deceased, and the conversations that they had with each other about the civil rights movement and the things that they were fighting for. Health care, quality, affordable health care. They were fighting for jobs and fighting for working people, fighting for just to give everybody equal opportunity and equal pay. And there's so much that is, I wish we could say that I'm reminiscing about the conversations that I overheard them have, the conversations that I overheard my father have with civil rights icon Majeska Simpkins when I was in college, but they're the same fights. They're the exact same fights. And this is 2022. But sitting in the South Carolina Senate, there's so many days and so many reasons I feel like it's 1922. And we really are not progressing in this state. And we will continue to lose our best and brightest for that and many other reasons when we have a Republican majority that's focused on anti-abortion and firing squads and open carry bills and book banning bills and CRT and transgender sports bills, knowing that I think there are only 2 or 3 transgender students who have had that issue, that we've just passed a bill to control. And so I want to take not just our messaging back to a place that people recognize. I want to take this state to a place where people recognize. And the fights that I hear people, when I travel the state now campaigning, people want to know, how can I earn enough to have one job? What do I need to do in this state to be able to have one job that will help me pay my bills, pay for my kids' college, buy my medicines, buy food, buy gas? That's the plight of everyday working people across South Carolina. What do I need to do to have health insurance when my employer only wants to hire me as a temp because they don't want to pay for health insurance benefits? What do I need to do when my employer cuts back my hours so that they don't have to pay for my health insurance? What do I need to do in this state to thrive? And I just believe you shouldn't have to know somebody to be somebody who matters in this state. South Carolina can and should be a place where everybody can thrive. And so those are the reasons. And when I say it's a hard question to answer, because it's a lot. There's no shortage of issues that we should be talking about. and we should be about, but we aren't. We just simply aren't. I mean, I serve in a chamber where my friend and colleague devoted his life to these same fights. And when he was murdered at Mother Emanuel, the hate crimes bill bearing his name was stopped by, at one point, 10 Republicans who blocked us from even debating it. That's the South Carolina we live in. They blocked us from even debating a hate crimes bill that bears their colleague's name, knowing full well that Senator Pinckney and 8 of his parishioners were gunned down at Mother Emanuel because it was Mother Emanuel, because they were black. And, you know, to not even recognize or acknowledge that hate exists at that level, to that, you know, magnitude is deeply concerning for me. Not just as a senator, though, but as a mom, as a black woman. It's really, I mean, all of these fights are personal for me because I'm the only candidate in this primary who has been open about the fact that I live with a chronic health condition. I was diagnosed with sickle cell anemia when I was a freshman at USC. And we have a governor, and he's not the first governor, but he is the governor right now, and we are still in this pandemic, which is why I wear my mask faithfully. But he has refused to expand Medicaid, knowing that it would be a tremendous economic boost to our state, knowing that it would keep over 100,000 South Carolinians from falling through the cracks as they currently are, knowing that it would help us reopen rural hospitals. In Bennettsville, when I was growing up, thankfully we had a hospital and it was open. I still have family there. My family's been in business in Bennettsville for 108 years, and we're still in business in Bennettsville, but we don't have a hospital there anymore. And so all of these fights are, you know, I believe that I have been directly impacted by the majority of the challenges and the policies that challenge everyday South Carolinians. And for me, that is personal because I like to listen more than I talk when I'm out campaigning. And it hurts to hear that there's so many of us who deal with the same struggles. And they aren't new. They aren't new. They just have not been addressed. And that's intentional. And so for a myriad of reasons, I'm running, but I do want us to create a state that my sons and your children want to live in. I think that we won't realize South Carolina's promise until we do that, until we create a state where all of us matter and all of us are in a position to thrive. And so I may have taken the long route to answer that question, but it's a question that is not easily answered because there's so many challenges that we face in this state as a people. Yes.
Thank you, Senator. We know and recognize throughout history that social justice movements and the civil rights movement can trace its roots back to the church. And so tonight's audience, both in person and online, on YouTube and on Facebook, need to really know how to get involved. And so my question is more practical than anything. We know that the primary is coming up next month. We want to talk
June
to
14th.
people about registering to vote and what's going to happen. Talk to them about how to help you get in that seat. How does that happen?
Well, thank you. That's a great question. That happens when we are not only engaged, but enlightened about all of the efforts at the state level to keep people from voting. I think if people understood how much the majority party is intentionally trying to keep them from voting, they would be more they would be less apathetic about it. And if, I tell people all the time, like, when I heard my parents talk about their struggles during the civil rights movements, the struggles are still the same. We are still oppressed. We are still suppressed. What these Republicans have done and to marginalize us it's not just by chance. And I say that because, and I want to give a little bit of background before as I answer your question, because when I was first elected to the South Carolina House, I was elected in a swing district. I think my black voting population at the time was 34%. And so I had a special primary. I won the special primary without a runoff. I won the general against the Tea Party candidate. And as soon as I got elected, we were starting the redistricting process. Well, I was looking forward to it because I wanted to understand how it worked. And I didn't anticipate the efforts of the majority party in terms of how it would impact my district. And so my swing district was targeted at the time, and they packed my district with black voters. And I thought, wow, why are they doing that? I just won with a black voting population of 34%, so why are they packing it with black voters when I've proven that I can, my interests and my vision for my House district is obviously in alignment with people who look like me and people who don't. So I did my own research, because when I took that question to my caucus leader at the time, he was like, well, we'll see what happens. And he was kind of passive about it. And I'm like, no, I don't think we need to be passive. So I did my research, and I discovered that it was a part of the Republicans' national strategy over 10 years ago to blacken swing districts like mine for 3 reasons: to further marginalize the voices of the minority, to rid the Democratic Party of white Democrats, and to create a permanent Republican majority stronghold. Now, I don't even have to ask y'all where we are now. Everything that they had on their list, on that list of strategies, their national strategy, has come to fruition, right? And so we were short-sighted. My colleagues were short-sighted in not fighting that plan, even if it did affect primarily my district. It affected all of their districts too, and that's why they didn't want to fight it, because they enjoyed what they call safe districts. And so it was more about, let me keep my seat. Don't you come up in here messing with my seat. I like it just the way it is. Let them draw it like that, because I'll only have to worry about a primary, or I'll only have to worry about this. But that's why we're here. And so I said that because now we are at a severe disadvantage, because they now have a supermajority. They have that last icing on the cake. They have that third thing, that permanent well, we hope it's not permanent, but it has been for the last 10 years. They've had that Republican majority stronghold in a big way. And so now they can steamroll us. They don't really need our votes. We don't have as big a voice now in the General Assembly, those of us who serve with the majority party. And so what people can do is, first of all, realize that everything we do at the state level affects and impacts everything you do. Everything you do. I say that all the time when I speak, especially at colleges and universities, because I think our young people have disengaged. And I understand why, because I have young sons, and they too would have disengaged, but for the arena that I'm in, and but for me just staying on them not to do that, because it's counterproductive, and it's exactly what they want us to do. They want us to disengage so that it stays the same. So I would say, please vote like your lives and livelihoods depend on it, because they do. And when I think about the fact that when I speak at colleges and universities and I ask our young people, how many of y'all want to stay here after you graduate? Not one hand went up. until recently. I went to Coker College and I got 2 hands. But I've been to multiple colleges and universities, and I always ask college kids that question: how many of y'all want to stay here? Nobody raises their hand. And that is troubling. It's not only concerning to me, it should be concerning to everybody. But the way to address that is to engage them, talk to them about the importance, not just of voting, but we have to make it real for them. Help them to understand if they don't vote, they're going to get more of what they don't want. They're going to get more of what is driving them away from South Carolina. And, you know, I talk to them all the time about the fact that we have high-paying jobs right here. But they don't know about it because we have a minimally adequate public education system that doesn't equip most South Carolinians with the skill sets that they need to take advantage of those high-paying jobs that are here. And that, too, is intentional, so that they can continue to push people into $7.25 an hour jobs. And so when you talk to your members and your family members, your parishioners, your friends, people in your network, let them know that everything we do at the state level impacts everything they do. And some have given up, some have been disheartened because of what happened and didn't happen in 2020, but this is 2022, and we have a real opportunity to change this state. And when we change this state, we can change their circumstances. It won't be overnight. We didn't get here overnight. But we have a real opportunity to begin to turn things around. The majority party is focused. They're very intentional about making sure that they give us the gloom and doom, and, you know, these are midterms, and y'all ain't gonna do well in the midterms because we got Biden in office in D.C., and you know what history says about that. When the party that's in office, they lose all the midterms, they lose this and they lose that because they want us to lose hope. So please, not only am I asking you to hold the people who are currently in office accountable, whether you voted for them or not, I'm asking you to hold me accountable, whether you vote for me or not, because that is the only way we're going to change this state. I don't want you to listen to what I'm saying. I believe that the best indicator of future performance is past performance. I want you to look at what I've done, look at the fights that I've taken on, and do the same for every elected official, whether you vote for them or not, whether you agree with them or not, whether you have Republicans representing you or not, but especially if you have Republicans representing you, whether you have Democrats representing you or not. Don't just base your vote on a party, because you will lose every single time. There are people in the Democratic Party serving with me that need to go home. There are people in the Republican Party who serve with me who need to go home. And only you can send them home. But you have to be engaged enough to know that just because they look like you, or just because they're your gender, or just because they're in the same party, doesn't mean that they're for you. Take the time to get to know what they're about and look at how they vote. Look at who they're representing, because so many of our elected officials have been there so long that they've now become the problem. They have become the problem that they came to solve. And that's sad, but it affects us disproportionately. And it's a situation that we have to change. If we want to change this state, we have to change that. And the way to change that is to vote, and also to empower and engage others, everybody in your networks, to do the same, because we have to dig our way out of this hole that we find ourselves in, so that our voices do matter, so that my children's voices do matter, so that your children's voices do matter, so that they want to stay here. South Carolina is only as great as her people. And for us to continue to do things that are counterproductive when we say we want, we want to brag about all these high-paying jobs and industries that are coming into the state and all of that, and that's great. But if we are bringing these high-paying jobs in knowing that we are going to bring people from out of state to fill those jobs, then what good does it do to South Carolinians who are here and who are in desperate need of those opportunities? So we can turn this train around. It's off the tracks. It derailed a long time ago, but there is hope. But we are that hope. And so if we lose hope, we are playing right into the majority party's handbook.
Thank you. I want to go ahead and allow anybody in the audience that has any questions that you would like to ask. You're welcome to come up, or take a mic somewhere and ask Senator McLeod any questions that you may have. Is everybody ready for a question yet? Anybody yet? Yes, sir. Go right ahead. We're going to bring the mic up. Okay.
One of the questions I wanted to ask, because you did mention the issue about the teachers.
Yes.
I'm the board chair of Greenville Tech Charter High School. And one of the things that, I hear when I go to Columbia is they mention about how teachers' pay need to be increased.
Absolutely.
Been talking about this for a long time, and we've lost teachers in the state because of it. Is there any plans or anything that you have on your mind that could help us understand why it hasn't happened yet?
Yes, sir. That's a great question, and one I love to answer. Here's the thing. It has not happened yet because the majority party won't allow it to happen. I am one of, I think, only 4 senators in a body of 46 senators who voted against the Republicans' version of education reform because it wasn't true reform. I believe that we have to first listen to teachers on the front end. They are the ones who know what they need to be successful. They're the ones who know how, how they need, the resources that they need to be able to teach our kids. And so to not listen to them, and when I can tell you in the South Carolina Senate, I don't know about the House because I'm not there anymore, but there's one person who has a degree in education in the South Carolina Senate, one. But yet we continue to give them unfunded mandates. We continue to, teacher pay, raising teacher pay has been at the top of their list for, oh my gosh, the entire time I've been serving. And I've been serving in the South Carolina Senate now for 6 years, right? But teacher pay, raising their pay, isn't the only thing that's on that list. What they have said is equally important is smaller classroom sizes, and less testing. Those are like their top 3 things on their wish list. And it's sad that teachers in South Carolina have to have a wish list, but that's a reality, right? So if the Republicans were interested in doing something meaningful for teachers, they could do those top 3 things right off the bat. They have refused to do that. They've had, to make it look good, they've had town halls, and they've tried to engage them after the fact. There's a reason that we have lost, I think, most recently, over 7,000 teachers. That's an unprecedented number of teachers. And they are included when I say our best and brightest are leaving our state. Some of our best and brightest are teachers, too. But they are leaving our state. Let me tell you what I have done, even as a legislator. Like I said, the best indicator of future performance is past performance. So even now, I'm not waiting until I'm governor, right, to help teachers. My mom was a teacher. My sister is a teacher. And so I get daily some of the challenges that they face. I mean, we've got elementary school teachers who have to lobby us for a bathroom break. Real talk. They have to lobby us to put a bathroom break in the law so that they can actually go to the bathroom. That's where we are as a state, right? Okay. So I have done a number of things. One is I'm always going to listen to teachers on the front end. I'm going to ask them what they need to be successful, because that is what our children need. Our children cannot be successful if our teachers aren't. I've also introduced legislation in the Senate to recertify our nationally board certified teachers so that they can have that additional income and not have to drive Uber after they get out of the classroom, not have to deliver for DoorDash after they leave the classroom. I mean, these teachers are working multiple jobs just to make ends meet, and we are doing nothing about it. That has to change. So teacher pay, smaller classroom sizes, less testing. I've also made it so that teachers are able to get out of their contracts. If we're not going to pay them, then why are we holding them and keeping them from doing something different that does pay? That's not right. And I get that, but of course, you know, the Republican majority is in control, and so those bills haven't even received a hearing. But I did something else during the height of the pandemic. I introduced a bill to mandate COVID-19 safety protocols, because in my Senate district and around my Senate district, and I'm sure the same was happening here. I know that the same was happening here. But in and around my Senate district, teachers were dying. Teachers were dying. And I'm not talking, I mean, I didn't want anybody to die, but to see teachers in their 20s dying unnecessarily, I mean, it was just senseless, because we had a governor who was so about pushing them back to work, knowing it wasn't safe, knowing that they were going to meet that fate. And in fact, he even went on TV in Colombia and said, this is a virus, people gonna die. You know, he was real indignant about it, just dug in. You know, people gonna die, that's what this virus does. And I thought, wow, this is the person? This is the person that we have in the governor's office? So I introduced a bill to mandate COVID-19 safety protocols. It just made sense to me for our schools and for our businesses, so that employees, working people, and teachers and administrators and students could go to school and work safely, right? And the majority leader in the Senate looked at me and said, Senator from Richland, we know that you're a fierce advocate for the working people of South Carolina, but we just think that your bill goes too far. And I thought, isn't that interesting and ironic that people who call themselves pro-life care nothing about the living? And so that I did two things. I introduced them as independent bills that went, you know, of course they didn't pass. And I introduced an amendment on the floor of the Senate to make our schools and our businesses safe, when the Republicans gave employers safe harbor from liability. They gave them immunity from liability for knowingly exposing their employees to COVID. That is the state that we live in currently, right? And so that is the reason that they aren't protected. That is the reason that they aren't paid or compensated. I believe that teachers should be compensated in alignment with the national average for teachers, not the Southeastern average. And that is doable for us. We have a governor who just talked about the fact that we've got unprecedented money coming into the state. Of course, he didn't say it was coming from the Biden administration, but we know how that works, right? So he didn't say that. But that is exactly where the federal dollars are coming in from, and they are our federal tax dollars. But we have a governor and a Republican-controlled legislature that just this year sent $100 million to private school vouchers, knowing full well that those vouchers will only help the rich and the wealthy who don't need them. And I stood up on the Senate floor once again, and I said, look, we can't, it's obvious that you guys have the numbers to pass this over our objections, over, when I objected to the bill, or when any senator objects to a bill that's on the calendar, that bill is stopped. That's how they stopped the hate crimes bill. But the majority party can set the bill for special order and give it priority status, and that's what they did with this bill, right? So when they did that, my question was, well, are you going to hold these private schools that you're sending $100 million to, are you going to hold them to the same standards that public schools are held to? Are they going to be accountable to the people, since it's our tax dollars that are now going to the rich and the wealthy? And the answer is no. We offered amendments to make sure that they can't look at a student and say, you're black, I don't want you here. The Republicans said no. They can do that. You're disabled, you have special needs, we don't want you here. The Republicans looked at us and said, no, we're not going to do that. You are gay or lesbian, we don't want you here. The Republicans said that's fine too. They can turn away any student. And so the only students who will really benefit from that are, unfortunately, students whose parents already had the money to send them to private schools. I think the voucher amount is like $6,000 per student. I don't know of any South Carolina private schools where tuition is $6,000. So tell me where they're going to come up, where, a student who wants to go use that voucher, where they're going to come up with the other $6,000 or the other $12,000 to go to a private school. How are they going to get there? Because there's no transportation. The parents will have to provide transportation. So there's no shortage of efforts to defund public education by this party. And there's no shortage to, it's almost like we are doing things intentionally that are counterproductive to what we say we want and what we know this state needs. So they're watching 7,000 teachers, more than 7,000 teachers, walk out the door. Many of them leave the profession. They're so disgusted and should be with the way this Republican majority has handled public education in general. But they're fine with that. And now they are like, oh, you want to teach? They're just pulling people in. You want to teach? What do you know something about? Oh, yeah. We can put you in the classroom. We'll put you in as a substitute, or we'll put you in to teach on this subject that you know something about. But our public schools are underfunded, and I just believe, coming from rural South Carolina, that ground zero should be fully and equitably funded public schools across South Carolina in every county. That is the only way to have the equity and to give every student a fighting chance. When I go to my hometown right now, it breaks my heart to see that many of the schools that I attended are still in the same dilapidated condition that they were when I was there. Many of the teachers have left. There's no way to really incentivize them to come to rural areas, because why would they? Like, the pay is low or non-existent, really, and there are no resources available to them there. So we've got to fix our broken public education system, and that includes teacher salaries, that includes smaller classrooms, that includes less testing. It also includes broadband access, to see students having to do their homework and schoolwork in parking lots in 2022. It should be alarming to all of us, especially when the governor is on TV every other day talking about we have a surplus. How can you have a surplus when the basic needs of every South Carolinian have not been met? So,
came to mind with me is that, we have a lot of corporate coming in this state. We have a lot of money coming in this state. And it's a shame that any teacher would have to have a part-time job.
Right. And some teachers have multiple part-time jobs, and it's exhausting. I mean, how can you teach all day and then go work 2 other jobs after that? When do you get to spend time with your family? And so we've got kids whose parents are constantly working because they have to keep a roof over their heads. So it's a never-ending cycle, and the Republican majority has the power to break it, and they have refused to do that.
Thank you, Senator McLeod. You've been so spot on with many of your answers, and again, talking to our online audience as well as those folks who are in the room when we talk about what Pastor Johnson was just talking about, the economic boom that is happening in certain parts of the state. What are your thoughts in terms of how upstate region, South Carolina, seems to be outpacing other areas in our state, and what actually can the citizens in this area count on from a McLeod administration to help balance that?
Well, so your question is, what will I do differently from what's currently being done in terms of the economic disparities that exist. Here in the upstate, it appears that we have a lot of people moving in. And I told somebody just the other day that Greenville seems in many ways more progressive than Columbia. And I'm not sure, I know that I'm not sure whether the economic opportunities, though, are benefiting South Carolinians. And that is something that I will be very intentional about, because that's happening not just here, it's happening in Charleston. And people are moving into our state. They're moving into the Rock Hill area because of Charlotte and all of it. But South Carolinians aren't benefiting in any region. And that's just a fact. And we pay lip service. We have a governor who pays lip service to workforce development. And that is hurtful. It's hurtful to everyday working people. We also have a governor who has been very vocal and very intentional about using anti-labor rhetoric. And that's especially true, I'm sure, up here in the upstate, because they want people to believe that labor is anti-business. And I'm thinking, well, a business can't thrive without labor. So how are working people anti-business when working people are the ones who are the fuel that these businesses need to thrive and survive? And so we've got to get away from that. All of this rhetoric that is constantly being put out there, even some Democrats probably believe, because we've heard it so much, that you can't be pro-business and pro-working people. The two are on opposing sides, and that is simply not true. I believe that in order to call ourselves pro-business, as we do, we have to be pro-working people, which means we should be pro-labor. Because labor is not a bad word. Labor is looking out for the working people who work in the state, but they don't want labor to look out for the working people, because labor demands certain wages, they demand certain working conditions, they demand safe workplaces, all the things that I've been fighting for. And so, I hope that people understand that, in order to be pro-business, truly be pro-business in this state, and not be intentional about bringing people in from out of state to fill these high-paying jobs, we have to be very intentional and very careful about letting the Republicans define who we are. And I don't mean that as a party. I mean letting them define us in terms of our positions on the issues that matter. Like, no, you're not going to tell me, just like you're not going to tell me you're pro-life when I see you being pro-life supposedly on Monday and then you're pro-death on Tuesday. Like, how is that? How is that biblically reconcilable? Like, you can't be both. So just like you can't be both, you have to be both when it comes to business. But they are so hypocritical that they draw the line at business. Like, you can't be pro-business and pro-working people, knowing that you can't have a business without working people. So tell me how that works. So I will, as governor, be very committed and very vocal about working people in the state. We have to make the working people of South Carolina a priority. They have not been. They are not during this pandemic. They have not been, and there's so many, especially young people, like my sons. My people my age, they stay in jobs even when they aren't the best jobs. It's like, well, I've been in this job now for 10, 15 years, so I might as well just, things are going to get better. Young people are like, peace, I'm out. Like, this isn't working for me. And they are gone to other states where they can have better opportunities and better pay and a better quality of life, where, their government officials aren't focused on foolishness like abortion and firing squads and open carry bills and CRT and stupid stuff. So I believe that, I'm the only candidate in this primary who not only believes that the hardworking people of South Carolina deserve a living wage of at least $15 an hour. I've introduced legislation to do that. And so anybody can promise anything. And there are other candidates who are running for governor who have promised, I'm for working people and I'm for this and I'm for that. Yeah, but wait, show me some receipts. Like, where are they? I haven't seen you introduce any legislation to do that when you could have. I haven't seen you talking about doing that when you should have. So why now? Because you're running for governor, now you're about that. But I've introduced legislation not only to raise the minimum wage to a living wage. I've also introduced legislation to raise our unemployment benefits. During the height of the pandemic, I discovered that the working people of South Carolina were receiving anywhere from $42 a week in unemployment to $326 a week. And here's what's wrong with that. A, you can't live on either. B, when we had federal money coming in because of the pandemic, this governor tried to pull the rug out from under working South Carolinians every chance he got, and did. But for those who were able to receive that supplement, for however long they were able to receive it, it was like they were finally able to exhale. They were finally able to pay their bills not working because they were unemployed and they were getting unemployment plus the federal supplement. And they were like, oh my gosh, is this what it feels like to be able to buy food and medicine? Is this what it feels like to be able to pay my rent and buy food and take care of my family? And that's sad. And then you got a governor who says, well, these people are lazy. That's their code word for us. These people are lazy. They just don't want to go back to work. No, they don't want to go back to work for slave wages. They've finally gotten a taste of freedom, and they aren't willing to go back into unsafe workspaces for $7.25 an hour. Hello. And I always say the pandemic exposed so much, but I'm grateful for those types of exposures because it woke people up. Like, whoa, wait. So you mean I could actually get a job here that pays what I was getting when I was. People want to work. They just don't want to have to work 3 jobs. Yeah, and then their unemployment is only calculated on 1 job. I mean, these folks got. I mean, the ways that they try to oppress people in the state is unbelievable. And so what I also discovered when I introduced the bill to raise the weekly benefits for unemployed South Carolinians, what I exposed was the fact that they were cheating the people of South Carolina out of their unemployment benefits during the height of the pandemic, when my phone was blowing up and people were wanting to know, how do I navigate this whole Department of Employment and Workforce thing, because I can't get a live person on the phone, or they told me that I was going to get my check and I'm about to lose my house, or I'm going to be evicted because I can't pay my rent. Whatever their challenges were, they were real. And so I was trying to help them navigate, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And they were like, $326 a week. I made $50,000 a year. And so now I gotta, max out at $326 a week. And so I introduced the bill to raise it because of that, not knowing at the time that those who earn more than $30,000 a year should have been paid according to what they earned, not maxed out or capped at $326 a week. And as only God would have it, the majority leader was the one who raised that very point in the subcommittee meeting on my bill. And I was like, I had been saying that, but who am I? I'm like, this is not right. Like, you can't cap people at $326 an hour. So I just took the only route I knew how to take, which was introducing legislation to change it. But the majority leader was like, no, she's right. You can't cap people because the law doesn't give you that authority or discretion. And they were like, but we've always done it that way. I'm like, just because you've always done it that way don't make it right. So when they had an opportunity, knowing that they had cheated so many people, so many South Carolina, I'm talking 1 million people were unemployed during the height of the pandemic. Y'all remember, right? So instead of reimbursing them for the pay that they should have received, they didn't do that. Instead, the majority leader went back to his party line, and they introduced a bill to give themselves retroactive discretion. So to give themselves permission to do what they had already done, which is unconstitutional. So it's going to have some legal challenges. But because of my bill, there is now at least a class action lawsuit for those who were cheated out of their money. So when I think about that, and I think about all of the things that those of us who are in this arena right now, there are things that we can do. It may not always equate to a bill passing. It may not always be a law changing, but if we can expose some of the dirt that they are doing and make it right for some South Carolinians, to me that's also a win, because it just confirms that we have to be vigilant about the things that matter and not just take what they say at face value and go with that.
Thank you so much. We intended for this meeting just to kind of be an opportunity to hear her responses to a few of our questions. And what we'll probably do now is I see another hand over here for a question. And then we got 2 more questions. And then what we'll do is we'll transition to allowing you all to kind of connect with her one-on-one. She's been pretty active and pretty busy over the last couple of days as well. We thank her for coming up to be here with us. So I'm going to ask, you have a question, then you have a question, then.
Sure.
This question was online. What is your plan to address the gun laws and the safety in our schools?
Sure. So guns have been an issue and a challenge for us for a long time, and it's gotten progressively worse. And we see what just happened in Buffalo, New York. We see what happened here 7 years ago at Mother Emanuel. I have introduced legislation. As I said, I am constantly working. So even when I was in the House, I introduced a bill that would, in South Carolina, I think after 3 days, if you go to buy a gun, I think it's 3 days that the gun seller has to wait for the background check to come back. If the background check doesn't come back at all, or if it doesn't come back at all, they can still sell you the gun after 3 days. Like, it's like, we're going to give you 3 days to get this background check back to me. Otherwise, I'm going to sell this person a gun. That makes no sense to me. And so common sense gun reforms, I've always been a champion of common sense gun reforms. And so I introduced that bill that just would require gun dealers and gun sellers to simply wait until the background check clears. I can't imagine why anybody would need a gun within 3 days just because the time has expired on the background check. Doing things that way, I think, are part of the reason that we are where we are. But I've also introduced a bill when I was in the House, too, that would not allow anybody who has been adjudicated mentally ill or mentally incompetent to purchase a firearm. To me, that, too, makes good sense, common sense, right? Common sense is not common in the General Assembly, I can promise you that. So in the Senate, I've introduced a bill to require all legal, because, you know, the NRA and the Republican majority, they're always like, well, you know, our Second Amendment rights, and we're legal, we're law-abiding citizens. And I'm like, yeah, some of you are, and some of you aren't. And I'm only interested in the ones who aren't, basically. But I introduced a bill in the Senate that would require every legal gun owner to carry liability insurance, because what we're now seeing is a rash of break-ins, car break-ins, house break-ins, and people are still, these people are stealing guns and using them for criminal activity. And so it just makes sense to me when you have liability insurance, whether it's on your car, on your home, on your person, you take extra care to make sure that that is secured, whatever is insured. You take a little extra time to secure it and make sure that it doesn't fall into the wrong hands. And so the same is true for guns. Those are just a few of the common sense gun reforms, and I think I've received, I'm not sure what it's called, but it's not a. I'm one of the gun sense advocates, I think, that has the Moms Demand Action designation. And in the past, I've been endorsed by Moms Demand Action and Everytown for gun safety. So the common sense gun reform groups, I've always had their support, because I've always been a champion for common sense gun reforms. But let me say this about guns, too. It was interesting to me this year. We debated open carry last year, I think it was. And South Carolina's law enforcement has also been very politicized in recent years. And so I watched SLED and the South Carolina Sheriff's Association be eerily silent on open carry, knowing that, A, it means open season on people who look like me, B, and B, it will at some point create the Wild Wild West, as I see it, when people are able to carry openly, because now there's so much tension and so much hate here in South Carolina, and law enforcement said nothing about open carry, knowing that at some point in the very near future, they are not going to be able to tell the good guys from the bad guys. And it's going to cost law enforcement their lives too. But they said nothing. Why? Because they can't. They have allowed themselves to become just as political as the governor and our Republican majority, and that's troubling. They were very vocal when I was on the floor trying to get medical marijuana passed. They were adamantly opposed to that. Didn't want that tool to be removed from their toolboxes. They didn't want me to rob them of the power to arrest. And that too is troubling. So they are vocal when the Republicans are vocal and adamantly opposed to something, but they are eerily silent on issues like open carry, eerily silent on the hate crimes legislation, stuff like that. So we know that we need change at every level of government, and we need less politics, especially when it comes to law enforcement, and we need more accountability, because the reality is this is impacting all of us as we speak, but disproportionately impacts people of color. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, Senator.
Good evening.
My name's Osa Benson. I'm a native of Greenville. I first
Hi,
want to
Osa.
say thank you. Thank you for running for governor. It is important that we see faces that look like us to give us choices.
Yes.
And so I applaud your courage. I applaud, everything that you've stood for while you have served as senator. My question, I am an attorney of about 20 years.
Wonderful.
And I have done a little research because I needed to know, what the governor of South Carolina, what your responsibilities and your powers would be once you take a position in that regard. And so I learned that, one of my personal, a personal focus and a personal goal is to see the injustices in our criminal justice system, the bias, to in some way move that needle towards justice, right?
Right.
So, when I learned that the governor appoints district judges, in that regard, it's also important that we see faces that look like us on that bench, because
Right.
then they have an understanding of what we go through as African Americans in this state, in this city, in
Right.
this country. What would you do under your platform to help move that needle towards the arm of justice, to help eradicate bias in the criminal justice system?
Well, I can tell you that I've introduced one of the most, if not the most comprehensive criminal justice reform bill that has been introduced so far, and I'm really proud of that. I haven't had an opportunity to really get in there and ask for a hearing because I've been running, but I introduced a bill. It's called the Transparency and Justice Act. And it would make hate a crime in South Carolina. It would ban police chokeholds and no-knock warrants. It would repeal our expansive citizens arrest law. Both of my sons are college athletes, and when Ahmaud Arbery was hunted down like a wild animal in Georgia and gunned down in broad daylight just for jogging in his own neighborhood, it not only broke my heart, it really scared me, because my sons have jogged in our neighborhood, and I never imagined that citizens would have that kind of power and use those tools to harm anybody simply because of the color of their skin. And that might have been just my being naive, but it hadn't really occurred to me that was a possibility until that happened. And so I looked at our citizens arrest law and discovered that it's even more expansive than Georgia's, so it would repeal that. It would also require more scrutiny, more scrutiny on the front end when law enforcement, when candidates present themselves to become law enforcement officers for the first time, but also once they become law enforcement officers, they would have to go through additional screenings and be vetted even more to make sure that they don't have any memberships or anything on any information on their social media or that is hate, that is aligned with hate groups or hate organizations. and that's not currently being done, I don't think. It would decriminalize marijuana, because we see so many of our young people whose futures are just ruined because of simple possession. It would demilitarize our police. It does a number of things, and I'm sure I'm going to forget something, but one of the final things, and one of the most important things that it also does, is it would get rid of qualified immunity in cases of unjustified law enforcement killings. And so I am really proud of that. That's an area that we need to really focus on, and I will as governor. Of course, it is a legislative initiative, which is why I introduced legislation. But I know how to work with the legislature, and to get things done. I will continue to do that as governor, and I have been able to get bills passed even through this legislature, which is hyperpartisan at this point. So those are just a few of the things. And I've always been open about the fact that we need to address the systems. These are systems that need to be reformed and changed. We can't continue to put a Band-Aid on the things that that we're facing here in this state. And nobody in the majority party has an appetite for that. But there are some things that as governor I can do that I cannot do as a legislator, and I am very prepared to do everything in my power to make that a reality, so that we can begin to address the systemic ills that challenge us.
So, Pastor Johnson, as we get ready to transition, tonight has been a wonderful discussion with gubernatorial candidate Senator Mia McLeod, sharing with us her platform. For more information on Senator McLeod, go to www.miaforsouthcarolina.com.
Mia for SC.
MiaForSC.com.
Right.
I'm so used to seeing SC standing for South Carolina.
It does.
MiaForSC.com for more information. And Pastor Johnson, PUA has just done a tremendous job in lifting up information regarding candidacy in the area over the last little while. Thank you for bringing this platform to Mountain View tonight. We're very grateful.
Yes.
There's an online audience that's been consistent the entire time we've been on tonight. So Senator McLeod, I don't know if you have something you want to say to them as we transition. We're going to close out that live broadcast both on Facebook and YouTube, and then allow you to interact with these folks in the audience.
Okay,
In-person
wonderful.
audience.
Well, I want to thank you all. I want to thank the two of you certainly for allowing me to come in this evening and to share my vision for a better, stronger South Carolina, and to share with you some of the things that I've done. I would just simply say to the audience, thank you all for being here, and I would love to just remind you that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing year after year, election after election, and expecting a different result. We have a real opportunity to do something different and hopefully to achieve a different result this time. I am no stranger to hard work. God didn't say it would be easy. He just said it would be possible. And we have to move forward in faith, knowing and trusting and believing that better is on the horizon, but only if we seize it, only if we seize this opportunity. And so I would ask for your prayers for myself and my family. I would ask for your vote on June 14th so that I can kick Henry McMaster's butt on November 8th. And together, I believe, we can create a better, stronger South Carolina. And with your help and support, I would simply say change is coming to South Carolina, and she's going to look a lot like me. So get ready. Get ready. Thank you.
One. So now,
Check one note. Let me go ahead and just sign off. Thank you once again for our online audience. Again, miaforsc.com. Go check out her platform, engage with her, email her, pick up some information that you might need to share with your family and your friends. Thank you, PUA, for hosting this platform at Mountain View Baptist Church. Go to PUA also on Facebook. Go to the website, email, check it out. Our pastors are leading in our community, and we're very grateful that you are following and responding to this type of leadership. So thank you for joining us online. We're saying good night to you, but we're staying live in the audience here at Mountain View so that Senator can interact with those folks who have come out to support her tonight. Thanks for joining us.